thank you so much for having me here today. I love doing these presentations and I love sharing what I know about the really dynamic ecosystem of Proptech and the opportunities that exist out there for it. And what I've tried to do is pull together a bit of data to help us understand what the size of that opportunity looks like and what the opportunity cost of not embracing it a bit faster looks like. I have taken a little bit of a national role. I haven't had access to a lot of the data, but let's take a look. I always like to start with some data and statistics so that we can ground ourselves in what the reality is now inside the property market. So residential real estate, $10.6 trillion asset class in Australia. It is our favourite asset class to invest in. It is infinitely bigger. It is 10 times bigger than commercial property. It is infinitely bigger, 3 times bigger than superannuation funds. Property is Australia's favourite spectator sport, right? We're more than cricket, more than any kind of footy code you follow. This every Saturday is the code that unites the nation. $446 billion of residential sales over the last 12 months. These are figures to May from CoreLogic, and we've done 505,000 sales over the last 12 months to May. Now, we average kind of around that 500,000 over the last 10 years. That's usually the number that we sell each year of property. 8 years ago, it was kind of around the mid-fours, but now we're heading over 500. And there are now, according to CoreLogic, 11.1 million dwellings in Australia. Now, about 12 months ago, they found about 1 million down the back of the couch because they realised that they'd forgotten to count Battleaxe boxes the way that they should have. So there was a few more properties out there than that they knew about. Now, of that, about 3.4 million of those dwellings are now in New South Wales. So we are the biggest. We are obviously the biggest state. We all know that, right? And we are where the most residential property is transacted. 31% of properties are rented. However, in New South Wales, only 25% of people actually rent currently. Interesting change in statistics. And 56.2% of household wealth is held in housing. This shows you that we absolutely love this as an asset class. The construction industry is valued at the moment at around $360 billion annually. This is how much revenue we bring in through construction, through construction in Australia. And the median house price is now passed in across New South Wales. This is 1.13 million. So you need to be a millionaire to own a house in New South Wales. And the cost to build a new home. Now, these statistics are from 2022, so I think they're probably out a little bit, but I can see the builders in the room kind of having a little giggle. But what are they at? 20%, we reckon?
I think it was more than that.
Yeah, okay. So, but I based my numbers on 2022 numbers, and the number that we get to at the end of all of this thing is scary enough, so let's stick with it, right? 473,000 is just the cost to build a new home. That doesn't include the land underneath it. That's just the cost of the land, and it's a little bit dated as a number. So what does that mean? So what is the challenge in this? Well, we have federal government new home targets. We need to be building 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years. And how many homes do we need to hit that target? Well, we need to be building 240,000 new dwellings every single year across the entire country. The highest recorded output that we've ever managed as a country is 217,000 per annum. And so the shortfall over 5,000 years is 250,000 plus dwellings that we are going to be short if we smash it out and go the hardest we've ever gone before and do the best that we've ever done and repeat that for the next 5 years. That's the kind of that we are still going to be 250,000 homes, more than 250,000 homes short to meet our growing population's need. So the supply issue that we find ourselves facing is going to continue. What we see in this equation too is that currently around 1% of property is social housing. And the build to rent category is going to take 10 years to ramp up. So the pain that we are experiencing around rental shortages, around affordable rental homes, and around disadvantaged property, and that is something that we are going to be living with for at least 5 years, and then it will start to hopefully ease up over 10. But it is the result of decades of government around Australia of all stripes, regardless of what colour shirt you follow, but all stripes basically outsourcing and delegating the rental market to the private sector. And while we now have issues between government and privates basically saying, well, you shouldn't be behaving like there's competition. Well, that's what happens when you outsource it to the private sector. Okay. So the cost of a new home build is $473,000. We worked that out before. So what are why do we struggle? Why are we going to face a 250,000 shortage in properties, even if we build faster than we've ever built before? Here's why. We have 3 tiers of government that control our sector or that influence our sector. The regulation levels are quite extraordinary. And I'm not saying these are bad or good, they are simply reality. I'm not making a judgment on them, I can't change them overnight. We have manually executed and manually managed planning regulations, although it's great to see Prop Code here tonight because I think that they're going to help us fix that. We have building techniques that are centuries old. Men turn up with bricks. They dig foundations and they lay bricks in the majority of the housing that we still build. This is, and we have legacy words like tenants and landlords that stem back to like the 11th century. We love a bit of tradition in our sector, but increasingly labour is becoming extraordinarily at a high cost. And the lack of transparency around the process. What stage are we up to in the build? Where am I up to in my home? What happens next? How much money do I need to find? How much more is it going to cost me? Why are there delays? There's no transparency in that system at the moment. It is very hard to see what comes next. Although we are starting to make improvements in it, we are only literally just scratching the surface of it. What we see too in the building industry especially is that it has, until very recently, been 99% invisible data. We don't know if defects are caused by a bad trade or a bad supplier, because we don't really trace the supply chain the whole way through, and we're not managing it. We're just thinking that Mrs. Smith in number 37 is a bit of a moaning cow who's always finding fault in what you built for her. We're not really looking at it like data, but we are now starting to see the data become visible inside the construction industry, and this is enormously exciting and it offers us huge opportunity. But what we still are at, and this is going to be the case for a couple more years yet, is that the data that we do have is sitting in different silos. So we have incredible data sitting in our property, in our New South Wales land registry. We have incredible data sitting in property data stacks like CoreLogic and Domain and Proptech and all of these guys, but they're not necessarily all talking to each other yet. We are turning the planning data into data, or planning regulations into data, but they're all sitting separately and they don't talk to each other yet. We're still too early in that journey. So what's the cost of this? What is this costing us? Well, slow. We take about 107 days on average across New South Wales for building approvals. That's across all of our councils. That's a really long time. That's more than that's 3 and a bit months. I can't do the maths. It's more than 3.5 months, right? So I send in my plans, and then 3.5 months later, if I'm lucky, I'll get an approval, or I'll get told what's wrong with my plans and what I now have to change, and I can go back to the back of the queue and wait another 3 months. Time is money, and money requires finance, and finance requires even more money, and this adds to the cost of our builds. It's taking us on average in New South Wales 12 months to build a home. On average. Many take a lot longer. That's if you're doing quite well. We have extraordinary wastage in our industry, which is astonishing given how expensive construction material is now. But it's really easy to send the apprentice down to Bunnings to grab some more stuff to fill the shortfall and then chuck the rest into the skip bin. And we see that happening a lot. 44% of Australia's waste is building material. Why is building so expensive? I wonder. We're chucking half of it away. It is really high risk. Builders are entering admin at twice the rate of other industries in Australia. Building companies are some of the riskiest businesses to be in as an industry. We have a really high rework rate because we're not tracking the data, because we don't really have quality control. Now, 0.39% of every construction contract is spent on defects. 0.39, kindly, what does that matter? It's not even 1%. 360 billion times 1%, people. That's the cost of rework to us as an industry. That's quite a large number. If we could bring that down, how much time could we save? How much stress could we save? How much waste could we save? And because of all of these things, our building structure, the way that we build is extraordinarily expensive. Our median price now 11 million in New South Wales, and we are producing $2.8 billion worth of waste every year. That 44% times the cost of waste equals 2.8 billion, and defects, I did the maths, it's $4.4 billion. It's a lot. It's a real lot. So this is what the cost of it, hanging on to like anything to the status quo, because that's the way we've always done it. The cost of that is $4.4 billion. $18,000 per new home, and that's on a $463,000 new home. So I'm pretty sure those numbers have gone up too. Now, I know we are in Parramatta, home of the Parramatta Eels, and I know we're in New South Wales, and that therefore we are all rugby league fans, and I am a rugby league fan. I grew up in Melbourne, but the first code that anyone ever sat me down and explained what was happening on the field was rugby league, so I do have an affinity to it. But I think AFL is really the best example of what's going on at the moment, because some of my slides are a bit wonky, but it's full of dropped balls. Like, it's a bad game of AFL, what happens in our industry. It's full of dropped balls, slow handoffs, missed goals, unclear game plan. We've lost lots of time, new rules that are constantly being overlaid on us because we're not doing it right. So obviously legislating is the best way to get us to behave better rather than address the fundamental issues that are affecting us. And we have way too many injuries because of what is going on. One of the things I didn't cover as part of the costs of it, what is the human cost to the method that we currently use? And that is that the construction industry has the highest suicide rate of any industry in Australia. 26.4 out of 100,000 people, mainly men, every year, take their own lives in construction. That is the cost of a build. Because of stress and like the work that they're going through. Now, this is the Proptech universe as of I think September last year was the last time we updated it. Now, the best way to work out what is happening in the Proptech universe is to publish something online and then wait for the screening about who missed out, right? So we did it originally in about February, we updated it again in May, and then we had to update it again in September because so many came out of the woodwork. What we identified in this version of the map, and I'm not at all happy with the categorisation, that will be changing this year, but there are over 478 Proptechs and Proptech products operating across Australia. Back in 2019, there were 188 that were counted back in the day. So that's a 62% growth in this sector in the last 5 years. The majority of our industry is quite new and is less than, or is around 5 years old, or 5, 6 years old. We have had rapid growth, extraordinary growth over the last couple of years in data, AI, and consumer and developer technology, and of course in ESG, and we'll talk about why that's happening. And construction technology is emerging. Construction and building technology is now starting to emerge, it's starting to build up a pace. Hallelujah. So the rich Proptech, what is Proptech doing? Because when I talk about Proptech, it depends what sector you're in. You think it only affects your sector, and we talked before about the data silos. So let's look at what the breadth of that looks like. First of all, we have planning and regulation tech at the beginning of the process of trying to build or create new homes. How are we planning? How are we regulating that? What are the development controls around it? That is being turned into a major data set, and we're seeing some great work being done there. We're then seeing a whole bunch of technology coming out of this path around suitability and availability. Realestate.com and Domain were the first ones telling us what residential property was on the market, but we're seeing that expanding now into even things like Property Dollar. Is this a good property for me to invest in? Why is it a good property for me to buy? what land is available, a whole bunch of technology starting to help us find the right property. And in fact, this year, as part of the Proptech Awards, consumer Proptech in that buying space and the property investing space is one of the biggest growth categories that we're seeing. Construction materials and logistics. So construction is a growing sector, but as part of it, what we are starting to see is, as an industry, we are literally manufacturing homes, but we're treating it like handcrafting every single one. Now, we might have processes to speed that up, but the nature and tradition of our business is that we hand build them all. But what we're starting to see is if we start to borrow examples like in the auto industry, where most of their work is actually automated and manufactured and then assembled, we start to see the introduction of just-in-time production happening inside the construction industry. Not turn up with the floorboards, can't get anyone there until it rains next because I've got something happening on a job up there while the weather's good, and then so basically just-in-time manufacturing happening. Price, valuations and finance, as our brothers in fintech, what's the price of this house, what's the value of it, how much is the mortgage on it, how much does it owe, how much can we have, how much equity have we got, the customer journey and marketing insights, and especially real estate sales and business processes. These are kind of like the old school Proptech that's been around for a while, and property ownership and maintenance. So how do we maintain, manage rental properties especially, but increasingly this is starting to move into forever home ownership. How do we manage and upgrade and maintain our homes? Because as we all know, especially in New South Wales and Sydney, owning a property is a team sport. It's very hard to do as a single person. You need a partner. You need to rock, scissors, paper every time and question your marriage and all of your life choices every time you need a contractor to upgrade it. So what we're seeing is now starting to take, and if you're together and you're at that age where you're buying a property together, you've probably got kids, you probably need to do a lap of woolies and you need to do weekend sport and all of that stuff. So trying to coordinate upgrades and improvements is a major problem. And that's starting to get outsourced. So what's going to drive this change? Big data. Big data is really, really, really going to drive this change. The bigger the better, right? And we have passed the tipping point as a society in data, not just in property. Property data is probably one of the oldest data sets that we've got in lots of ways because we've been tracking title since we got off the boat. And what we're finding is that big data is, in the last 2 years, we created more data than we have done up until the last 2 years as a society globally. Billions and billions of tetrabytes. AI, so ChatGPT wrote your speech, did a very nice job. We're experimenting with Gemini. It's incredible stuff what it can do. But AI works off big data sets, and AI then eats big data sets for breakfast, right? So the bigger the data becomes, the cleverer the AI becomes, the more it can start to merge and the hungrier it gets for new data. But the next stage of that is APIs and integration. How do we get this data and this functionality, this AI functionality, to start to move to hand it off? How do we do something in property management and then hand it off to planning? How do we hand the planning off to the construction? And how do we do that in one environment rather than hiring a person to carry it across on a zip drive or something, or attach it as a PDF file and send it over an email? We don't want to do that. And the cost of the status quo. This is absolutely going to be the thing that completely convinces us, because it is just becoming too expensive to hang on to legacy. We can't afford to do it the way we've always done it. It is sending builders broke. It is making us sick. It is failing to deliver the number of homes that we need. It is leaving people homeless. That's the cost of it. So more pressure is coming, hooray! More stuff. So we're going to be net zero by 2050, which is really good. We survived. We were part of we have a house down the south coast. We were part of the 2019 bushfires. Never want to go through that again. Absolutely first-hand experience of how scary that was. But 78% of Australia's existing housing stock is only rated 2 out of 10 stars with the new ratings coming in. There is going to be a massive surge of work for builders developers and tradies in upgrading homes. And what we are going to see, and I'll show you some stats around that, is extraordinary finance going, green loans, finance going into encouraging homeowners to upgrade their property, and investors as well. And the banks and the insurance companies are obliged to this under federal legislation because they need to understand the risk, the carbon risk inside their portfolios. So what we're seeing is that the grassroots of property ownership happening at a local government level, at a state government level, is now feeling the pain of federal legislation in how we are financed, telling us what we need to be focusing on. So at the moment, 10% of carbon emissions are created by residential buildings, and about 24% is electricity use. But by 55% of homes are expected to be electrified by 2027, and banks and insurance companies are assessing the climate risk in their portfolio. And what we're going to start to see is carrot and sticking coming from our banks and from our insurance companies around, oh, sure, you don't have to re-insulate your roof or change your airflow or install, a new a heat pump. Rather, you can stick to your gas hot water service or your electric hot water service the old way if you want. But it's going to cost you more, not just in keeping it there or repairing it, but in your insurance policy. And we're going to start to see, and we're going to start to see the valuation of properties, existing properties, be impacted by how retro they are in their energy use and their energy consumption. So these new valuation models, energy efficient homes are going to be worth more. We see, Mark and I live in Russell Lee, in a west suburb inside Canada Bay Council, so Des Moines 5 Dock. We must be the knockdown rebuild centre of Sydney. I'm pretty sure we are, right? We were a little suburb of little 1930s and 40s red brick 3-bedroom homes, 2 and 3-bedroom homes. They are all being knocked down for new homes that are being built on site. And why is that? Because the homes that are getting knocked down are 1-star. They're not even on 3. If they have a star, the new homes are all 8, 9-star rating properties. And so the fastest way for Canada Bay Council to hit its number with the state government and with the federal government is to just let those homes go through. Supply crisis. So not just with green Proptech, but build, manage and assessing the value. So we're going to see like a real supply crisis of tradies who can help us do this work. There's going to be a boom. Where are we as construction people going to find people if they're all helping the private sector or the existing properties upgrade? And what we saw too is the Building Services Commissioner, David Chandler, is enforcing design compliance to reduce defects. So we're not just going to improve we're trying to improve the quality at the same time that we're improving the quantity. Now you can have it better and you can have it in volume, but you can't have it cheap. Like, it's like that Venn diagram that we always see about the 3 things. You can either only ever have 2 of them, and you can either have it slow and you can have it cheap, but you can't have, so what we're seeing is that this is starting to put even more pressure on the cost of the properties that we own, the properties that we maintain, and the new property that we have to build. So we're at an inflection point. Our human processes cannot keep up. There's still too much data and functional silos happening out there. We haven't got them crossed off. They're not talking to each other. It's too early yet for AI to take over, so we're still at least 5 years out before Skynet takes over. Although I could be wrong, could start to learn twice the speed, and it could be 2 years. But we are still too early for the AI to just completely manage it for us. And what we find from our existing legacy industry, so from real estate, from the construction industry, from developers, there is, with 478 Proptechs out there, able to do so much, there is overwhelm about what they should do. And so when there's too much choice, they tend to do nothing. And so we're kind of in this bit of a chicken and egg situation. So what does Proptech need to do? We need, as a Proptech industry, to work to create comfort and certainty on technology standards. So we need to start to shift. Need to start making our technology feel familiar and safe to our users, not carrot and stick them. So not sort of hit them with a stick to say the way you do it is old, it's slow, it's stupid. You should, embrace the technology revolution. That approach only appeals to a small proportion of players. Knowledge around cybersecurity and the work that we're doing to keep people's data safe. There's a lot of fear around that. We need more compliant and transparent data policies around how we're handling data and what we're going to do with it. So the fears around AI taking over our databases and starting to build crazy stuff in strange places is not going to be realised. And we need much better best practice APIs and integrations. The quality of API and integration access is based on whoever's coding at the time. We need some really strong standards around that. So we need to recognise that change with our legacy industries is not actually a fight, but it is an evolution, and we need to bring them along on that journey. And we as an industry need a really clear vision on how we help. But it is time, so it's time to get our house in order. It's time at a house level, like individually within our own Proptech businesses and within our own property businesses and with our own developer businesses. What can we do in our own backyard around compliance and best practice? What should we be doing to fix up our patch, to literally renovate our space inside our own businesses? But we should then also be looking at our neighbourhoods. So like in the Proptech space, who are our neighbours in this space? And how can we make sure that we're all singing off the same song sheet and bringing everybody along, working harder on collaboration and integration? I hear too often that's not on our roadmap as an excuse, and we need to start to share our roadmaps more widely. And then as a city, so in our broader area, industry-wide, so between Proptechs and developers, Proptechs and agents, Proptechs and the building industry, what can we do to create that much bigger picture of how this could work? And so thank you, Rob, for creating today to be part of that. So Proptech is able to empower the following, what we're seeing. It can help us build more housing if we just let go of how we've always built it. We can prefab, we can start to build off-site. We're seeing some amazing Proptech in that space doing that. We can see Proptech that is much better, we can see it can empower housing that is much better planned. It can empower housing that is delivered to a higher quality. It can, that is more energy efficient, that is nicer to live in because it's doesn't cost as much to live in, and actually it feels really livable. It's got great living space. It's built faster, it costs less, and it's sold more quickly, and it supports a much bigger industry. Because if we time that 250,000 properties that we are going to be short by the cost of a new home in Australia, we see that the size of the whole is the construction industry could be $4.4 billion bigger. And think of the employment around that. Think of what our country would look like if that was happening. Because a place to call home is a human right. It's not just about a transaction. It's not just about it. I mean, look, it is a very popular transaction and it's an asset that we all love. But it resonates with us on an emotional level and a psychological level because shelter is one of our base human needs. So we need to get this right, and we need to stop seeing it as a privilege. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time.